Welcome folks to Horsemanship 101 again today. Still kind of windy out, so we're going to hide in the tack shed again today, and we're going to talk about saddles. Now there's a lot of things to consider when you want a saddle. First thing you got to do is decide what kind of riding you're going to do, because that really determines what you need for a saddle. You got your English saddles, you got your Aussie saddles, and you got a multitude of different kinds of Western saddles. And then there's saddles from other parts of the world that we won't even go into them. Let's stick with the more common ones that are more readily available, and being that I have actually 3 saddles here, they're all Western. They do have some things in common, but they're also quite different too in some respects, so I'm going to talk a little bit about them. One of the decisions you have to make is, like I said, the type of riding you're going to do, what you're going to use your horse for, basically determines what kind of saddle you need, or what would be best for the job. I equate the difference between an English saddle and a Western saddle like the difference between a sports car and a pickup truck. A sports car is pretty maneuverable, pretty fast, it's lightweight, but the pickup truck, you can get a lot more work done with it. So that's kind of how I view the difference between them. One, as far as riding goes, particularly if you got a tall horse and you're not real strong or you're kind of short, English saddles are a lot lighter. Same with the Aussie saddles. Also, Aussie saddle is actually like a hybrid a cross between an English and a Western saddle. It's like taking an English saddle, adding a horn and buck rolls and a higher cantle on the seat, and you got a Aussie saddle. Kind of a cross between the two. Downside to both the English and the Aussie saddle, in my opinion, is the cinch method. They don't use a Western style cinch, they use a English girth, which is a strap that comes down and underneath, and they have 2 short straps on the end of it and 2 buckles, and you only have a few inches of adjustment on both sides. So if you use the saddle on more than one horse, you can end up needing more than one girth strap to fit, because you don't have a lot of adjustment. They come in a lot of different sizes, and that's the only way you can make it fit different horses. However, there are some advantages to the English saddle as well. Like I say, lightweight. They have a single strap coming down to what they refer to the stirrups as irons. They have a single strap coming down. It allows lots of flexibility. You can move your leg around a lot. They twist nicely. There's some advantages to that too. One thing about the Western saddles is this one's got a fairly movable fender on it. They don't all. Some of them are actually quite rigid. I had my last saddle. It was wider and it was very rigidly attached. There was absolutely no movement forward or back, which really limited to where I could touch the horse with my feet for cueing it to different things that I wanted to do. Another one of the things you got to consider. Western saddles come in a lot of different styles. You get bear saddles, roping saddles, pleasure saddles, trail saddles, and within each of those there's variations of each one, and it's really hard to tell one from another for the most part, because you can get just about any feature on any one, and it makes it look just like another one. So kind of hard to tell the difference between a barrel saddle and a trail saddle sometimes. And then you get your show saddles, and basically they're the same thing, except they add a lot more. They'll have a silver plating on here, a little, they call it bling. It's just, you're paying money for looks when you buy a show saddle is what it is. And even in just a regular Western saddle, for good quality saddle, you can actually easily pay up to $3,000. So don't be shocked. However, this one right here, a couple $100 used. It's a functional saddle. It's not great, and I'll talk about some of the differences between these 3 saddles. We've got this little fella here. It's not expensive. It was a cheap saddle to begin with. I won't say cheap, inexpensive, even when it was new. Used, quite inexpensive. But on the right side, I don't have to worry about cleaning it and looking after it. If it gets a little banged up, it really doesn't matter. I don't care, because it's probably still going to outlast me. Things to watch for when you buy a used saddle. There's several different methods of attaching these D-rings. As you can see, this one's riveted into the skirt. If you're buying a used saddle, you got to watch to make sure that those rivets are secure. That's actually something you should do before you ride every time anyhow. You also have to look out for rot, because if the leather has ever been exposed to moisture or anything, it will deteriorate quite badly. And if it's an older one, again, rot can be a concern. If your stirrup leathers start rotting out, you can end up losing the stirrup. It can pull right off, and you're in big trouble. Lots of little things you got to watch out for. And like I said, you don't want your cinch coming undone. You don't want this D-ring pulling off. And I'll show you on another saddle here. This one's got a little different method of attachment. The D-rings on this one actually attach to a piece that goes right up and attaches directly to the tree. These ones are actually a little bit better in my opinion. I don't like the ones that attach into the skirt like the other one there, but one more thing to look at. Within each variation of saddle, you can get different height. This is what's referred to as a deep seat, high cantle. They come with different size horns too. That's probably the only way you're going to really tell a roping saddle apart is you'll find that this part is going to be a lot larger diameter because it's meant to be a little stronger for taking the pull of rope on it when they're roping calves. You'll also find on most saddles there is an extra hole at the back here for a rear cinch. Not all saddles have that. If you ever think you're going to have the need for a rear cinch, you're going to want to watch for that too. That's an option you're going to want. If you're roping in particular, the idea of that is the rear cinch keeps the saddle, when the rope tightens up on the horn and pulls forward, it keeps the saddle from tipping up. That's what they're for. These three saddles are all, one thing they do have in common is they're actually an Arabian saddle. They're all Arabian saddles. And the difference with an Arabian saddle is they're actually just a little bit shorter on the skirt, a couple of inches shorter on the skirt, because an Arabian horse, although not all of them have it, it is something that's exclusive to that breed, is they tend to have one less vertebrae in the back, hence a shorter back. You don't want the long skirt because then it starts digging into the hips and it's uncomfortable for the horse. However, you can take an Arabian saddle and stick it on any other horse as long as it fits reasonably well. This one I actually use on a quarter horse. Not a big deal. Okay. Now this saddle, not a particularly expensive one, but I like it because it's also fairly lightweight. It's not a horribly heavy saddle, probably somewhere in the neighborhood about, maybe 25 pounds at the most. This one over here, much heavier saddle, much better quality. I won't mention the name of the manufacturer. It was actually special ordered in from the U.S., and it is a fairly decent saddle. It's a well-known name, but it's also probably at least 30 pounds or more. I had another one that was probably closer to 40 pounds. Really makes a difference. One thing about this one, suede seat. It's nice and comfortable. You stick to it easy, but downside is it actually will wear out your pants. Seat of your pants will wear out on that one. Now this one over here, this is actually synthetic fabric. It's not leather at all. I'm not a huge fan of them, but on the bright side, they're extremely light. This saddle probably doesn't weigh more than 15 pounds. So similar to having an English saddle, if you have to lift a lot, or lift high, you got a tall horse or something like that, or you're just concerned about the amount of weight on the back of the horse, that's something to be considered. It also will not weather, it will not rot, because it's a synthetic fabric. So if you're out in the rain and that sort of thing, snow, whatever, not a big issue. One more thing to consider, which is another thing with these suede seats, if they do get wet, they stay wet a lot longer. So you can consider that one too. Whereas with this one here, it's a smooth leather. You can take a cloth, just wipe it off, you're good to go again, it's dry. So just a few things to consider. Some of the variations in saddles. Look for things like the basic way it's built. Just look at how cleanly cut things are, how nicely sewn together are. Like this one is not a high quality one. If you look through here, the holes don't line up really well in the multiple layers for putting the saddle strings through, stuff like that. It's not a high quality saddle, but it does have a few good features on it. The lower back is not as secure a seat. However, if you ever have to bail out in a hurry, you're less likely to get hung up on it. So some people don't care. Some people like the high back. Some people like a low back. Those are options. Just about any type of saddle you get, you can get that option. You can actually select, if you're buying brand new, you can select various heights. So personal preference, again, it's what you like, what you want, and what you're doing with your saddle. It all makes a difference. Again, I like the Western saddle. I got my saddle strings. If it gets hot and I want to take my coat off, I can tie it on. I can tie it onto the back. Or I can, if it starts off hot and I think it might cool off before I get home, I can tie it on and later on I can put it on. Other things, having the horn, even if you're not roping, it's still handy because you can stick your horn bag on. And you can carry stuff with you, like your, phone, water bottle, a sandwich, whatever you want. Maybe some tools if you're doing some fence repairs or whatever. Like I say, decide what you're going to do with your horse, what type of riding you're going to do, what kind of work you're going to do with it, and that basically determines the saddle that you're going to use and what you need and what you want. Like I said, a few tips weight-wise. This one's about 25 pounds. That one's about 15 pounds. That one's probably over 30 pounds. And you can get some that are way up in the neighborhood of 40. So depending on the height of your horse and how strong you are and how high you got to lift, how short you are, that may actually be a factor. Again, if you're, a lot of rain or something like that, a lot of moisture, the synthetic fabric might actually be better for you. The downside of these ones is they will make your butt sweat because they don't breathe. It is a synthetic fabric. It's just like when I talked about with the saddle pads. If you use a synthetic, it doesn't breathe. It won't wick away the moisture. Your butt's going to get hot and sweaty on this one. That is the downside of it. On the bright side of it, all that moisture is not going to hurt the saddle any. So something to be considered. Some people like them. I'm not a big fan of synthetic material of any kind for use with a horse, but some people actually swear by these saddles. The one that the owner of this particular saddle, that's not mine. They just absolutely love it, and understandably, it is lightweight. It's easy to handle. It's easy to tote around if you got to carry it any distance. It really does make a difference. So there you go. A few tips on saddles, folks. Saddle up, have fun, have a good day.